Welcome to segment 2 of Plato is Still Relevant, an annotated summary of Plato's Republic. In this segment, we are going to look at the first 3 definitions of justice with which Plato is confronted. 1 comes from old man Cephalus, the businessman. Tell truth, return what you owe. That's justice. The second definition of justice we're going to encounter is from Cephalus' son, Glaucon, more the warrior, help friends, harm enemies. And then the third definition of justice will come from the sophist, which I'll explain what that is, Thrasymachus, and it was probably more guttural, Thrasymachus, where he argues justice is the advantage of the strongest. So let's move on. We are now in the text of the Republic. And the Republic opens with Socrates going back to Athens. Socrates was always looking for what's in the human soul. He believed all knowledge was in the human soul and you just had to birth it. He considered himself a midwife, and he used question and answer question and answer method called the dialectic to pull the truth out of people. It's a very neat idea. We have it, we just don't know we have it. And he liked the city and he liked to examine men. He goes, trees and rocks can teach you some things, but I want to examine humans. So he's going back to Athens, and a group of young people surround him. And they say, where are you going, Socrates? And he goes, I'm going back to town. And they say, oh no, stay tonight, there's a festival. And they're having a relay race on horseback, and the relay baton is a flaming torch. So they're going to race, and then another horse is going to get up to the next horse. You know how relay races work, but they're going to pass a flaming torch. And Socrates goes, wow, I've never seen that before. But I'm going back to town. Then the young people surrounded him and said, Socrates, teach us, or we are going to beat you up. Socrates is like, what? Is there another choice? No. Well, okay. And old Socrates goes, they go to Glaucon's place. Actually, it was his father, Cephalus' house. And when they get to the house, Cephalus is there, and Socrates greets him. And you know, Socrates is not, at the time of this dialogue, he's old, but not that old, whereas Cephalus is old. And old Socrates, he asks Cephalus, what's it like to be old? And Cephalus starts to speak, and then the young people say, oh man, your sail can't even stand for making love, Cephalus. Let me see, put this in modern terms. Cephalus needed Viagra or Cialis. Do you get my point? And the young people are making fun of Cephalus. Cephalus says, wait a minute here, you young punks. And he says, and he quotes Sophocles. If you don't know Sophocles, he wrote Oedipus the King, Oedipus at Colonus, the Antigone. He was a great Greek playwright who's still read today, and we still talk about the Oedipus complex. But Cephalus quotes him, and he said, the greatest moment of my life came when I was free of that tyrant sexual desire. Now, think about that. A tyrant is someone who wants their way and wants it to the point that they will not stop until they kill you or get their way. Sexual desire is kind of like that. Desires of the body are like that. And Cephalus continues. He goes, growing old is not so bad. It just depends on your attitude toward those youthful bodily events. Think of a football player. You know, they knew when he was young he was going to be a great football player. He's developed, he goes into the NFL, he has a great career, and then at the ripe old age of 33, he's out of work. And his love of his life has been the physical game of football. And if he hasn't developed his mind or things you can do in age, his attitude toward old age is not going to be very healthy. And this is the point Cephalus is making. And then one of the young people say, oh, Cephalus, it isn't that your attitude toward youth. You hate losing those things. You're rich, and that's what makes it easy for you. And Cephalus says, well, if you're a bad man or a good man, it doesn't matter. Money doesn't help you. And then Socrates steps in and goes, Cephalus, what is the value of money? And Cephalus says, well, you know, when you get those old Phoenician tales, this was written around 380. There's Cephalus talking about ancient stories. He goes, you know those ancient Phoenician stories where if you're good, you go to heaven, if you're bad, you go to hell? Well, when you're young, you don't really believe them, but as you get old, you start to believe them. And the value of money is you can go back to people that you lied to or owe things, and you can pay them back. And so that you can go to the grave sleeping well. And Socrates goes, wait a minute. Cephalus, you think justice is to tell the truth and return what you owe? That's it? Cephalus goes, yes. This is often called businessman's justice. You know, and if you do tell the truth and return what you owe, you know, you pay your bills on time, you pay back loans, you get good credit. Matter of fact, today all over the TV they're talking about credit score, and if you got a good credit score, you're a good person. Some companies won't hire you if you have a bad credit score. So, you know, there are good consequences that come with this. But then Socrates says, wait a minute. I think in the sense world, telling the truth and returning what you owe is good. But think about this. What if a friend of yours loans you a spear? And he's in his right mind, and all is good when he lends you the spear. Or a hunting rifle. But then, in the meantime, his house burns down, his family dies in the fire, he loses his job, he loses his reputation, and he comes back for that spear or rifle or weapon and to kill himself. And you say, I broke the spear. Oh, the firing pin broke. I sent it to the gunsmith. You have now told a lie and not returned what you've owned. But, says Socrates, it seems you've done a just thing. And then you sit down and try to help your friend want to live again. So whereas, Socrates says, telling the truth and returning what you owe are good things, in the sense world, I don't think ideally this is what justice is. And then at this point he starts to want to question Cephalus, and Cephalus is no longer interested. Cephalus goes off and he says, just like I'm going to give my inheritance, my money to my son Glaucon, I also am going to pass the argument of what is just on. And isn't that what civilization does? Passes what they think is good from one generation to the next. Well, Glaucon picks up the argument, and he gives us cowboy justice or military justice. Justice is to help your friends and harm your enemies. 2 ships on the Mediterranean. You're on the ship with your friends. The other ship is enemies. If they have stuff and you're strong enough to take it, in the Greek world, you took it. Because it's just. Might makes right. Justice is to help friends and harm enemies. And Socrates goes, well, wait a minute. Don't you teach music to someone to make them musical? You couldn't do unmusical things to someone and make them musical. Likewise, how can you do something unjust to someone and make them just? I do not think justice harms anyone. Think of your eye. All the parts have to function in their perfect order for the eye to function properly. Harm any part of that eye, scrape the cornea, the eye doesn't function. I do not think justice harms anything. Finally, Thrasymachus now steps in. He's a sophist. Sophists told people how to win in law courts. And Thrasymachus is upset. He says, you know, Socrates, your ideal world is a game of words. In real life, justice is the advantage of the strongest. The country makes up laws, democratic laws or oligarchic laws like the Ukraine, ruled by a few people. If you violate those laws, you're unjust. In the world, justice is the advantage of the strongest. Period. Now, the rest of the Republic deals with this problem. So in our next segment, we will take up Thrasymachus's argument, justice is the advantage of the strongest, and Socrates' discussion with Thrasymachus. Thank you for joining me. Please like or subscribe, and let's make Socrates part of our everyday life. Thank you very much.